Picture this. You pick up the phone. You dial your son's number, or maybe your daughter's. It rings once, twice, and then they pick up. You're happy. You've been looking forward to this. You want to hear their voice, ask how things are going, maybe share a little about your week. But 4 minutes later, the call is over. They said they had to go. Something came up. They'll call you later. And you're left sitting there, holding the phone, thinking, what just happened? If that sounds familiar, I want you to stay with me right now. Because in my 40 years as a clinical psychologist, working with hundreds of families, listening to both parents and their grown children, I have heard this story more times than I can count. And here is what I've learned. Most of the time, it's not the length of the call that drives children away. It's not how often you call. It's not even what you talk about halfway through. It's the very first words out of your mouth. The opening phrase. Those first 5 to 10 seconds. That's where the damage happens. And most parents have absolutely no idea they're doing it. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 phrases, 7 specific things parents commonly say at the start of a phone call that cause your adult children to emotionally disconnect, sometimes before the conversation has even really begun. And for each one, I'm going to give you a simple, warm, natural replacement. This isn't about being fake. It's not about playing games. It's about understanding how the people you love the most actually receive you and making one small shift that can change everything. Let's get into it. Before we go through the phrases, I want to give you a little bit of the psychology behind all of this, because once you understand why these phrases cause harm, the replacements will make complete sense. Here's what neuroscience tells us. The human brain makes an emotional assessment of a conversation within the first 0.2 seconds of hearing a familiar voice. That's faster than you can blink. And that first impression, that emotional read, sets the tone for everything that follows. Psychologists call this emotional tone setting. The opening of a conversation is like a key that unlocks a certain room in the mind. If the key signals safety, warmth, and connection, the door opens wide. If it signals guilt, pressure, or emotional weight, that door starts to close, often without the other person even realizing it. Now add to that something I call the pattern lock. When adult children have spoken to their parents for years, they have built a deeply ingrained set of expectations. They know, sometimes unconsciously, what kind of call this is going to be based on the very first sentence. And when those early patterns are negative, when they signal, get ready to feel guilty, or brace yourself for a problem, the brain goes into a kind of self-protective mode. The person is physically present on the call, but emotionally, they've already half-checked out. That's not because they don't love you, they do, but love doesn't override the nervous system. So let's look at exactly which phrases trigger this, and what to say instead. The first phrase is one of the most common I hear, and one of the most damaging. You never call me. Or variations of it. I haven't heard from you in weeks. Or, I was starting to wonder if you were still alive. Said with a little laugh, but the message underneath is the same. I understand where this comes from. When you haven't heard from your child in a while, there's a real ache there, a longing. You miss them, and you want them to know it. But here's the problem. The moment those words come out, you never call me, your adult child doesn't hear longing, they hear accusation. Their brain immediately shifts into defense mode. They start calculating, when did I last call? Was it that long? Am I a bad son? Am I a bad daughter? And guilt, my friends, is one of the most powerful conversation killers there is. Nobody wants to stay on a call that makes them feel like a failure. So what do you say instead? Try this. I was just thinking about you, and I wanted to hear your voice. That's it. Simple, warm, true. And instead of making your child feel like they've done something wrong, it makes them feel wanted. There's a world of difference between you've been neglecting me and I thought of you and reached out. One closes the heart, the other opens it. The second phrase feels humble. It even feels considerate. But I promise you, it has the opposite effect. I don't want to bother you, but the moment your child hears that word but, their internal alarm goes off, because every adult alive knows that whatever comes after but is the real thing. "I don't want to bother you" is the preamble. What's coming next? A problem? A request? Something heavy? This is what psychologists call preemptive anxiety. You have just warned your child that something emotionally significant is about to land on them before they've even had a chance to settle into the call. And there's something else happening underneath this phrase that most people don't realize. When you say, "I don't want to bother you," you are actually placing a small emotional burden on your child. Now they have to reassure you. They have to say, "Of course you're not bothering me, Mom." And that reassurance, that emotional labor, starts the call on an uneven, draining note. What to say instead? Make it clean and respectful of their time. "Hey, I have a quick question. Do you have 2 minutes?" Ask. Pause. Let them answer. This small act of genuine consideration does more for connection than any amount of self-deprecating softening ever could. This one is trickier because it doesn't feel like a problematic opener. You're just sharing. You're staying connected. What could be wrong with that? Here's what's wrong. When you open a call with bad news, a health scare, a neighbor's tragedy, or a community problem, you are training your child's brain. Over time, if the calls from mom or dad consistently begin with something worrying or sad, the brain builds an association. Call from parent equals incoming emotional weight. It becomes a pattern, and people naturally begin to brace themselves, or worse, begin to avoid the source of that weight altogether. Now, I'm not saying you can never share difficult news. Of course you can. Family members need to know when things are hard. But the opening of the call is precious real estate. Use it wisely. What to do instead? Lead with something light, something genuine, something that invites them in. Start by asking about their life, their week, their kids, something they mentioned last time you talked. Once there's warmth in the conversation, once there's genuine connection, then, if you need to, share the harder things. Context changes everything. The same news feels different when it comes wrapped in love rather than leading with alarm. Here is a phrase that parents use thousands of times and almost always with good intentions. You're trying to acknowledge your child's demanding life. You're trying not to seem needy. But the phrase, "I know you're busy, but," creates a quiet paradox, and your child feels it, even if they can't name it. Here's the psychology. When you say, "I know you're busy," and then continue talking anyway, you are doing something contradictory. You're acknowledging their time, and then ignoring it in the same breath. It communicates, on some level, your schedule matters, but not quite enough for me to actually ask. Over time, this creates a low-level resentment. Your child may not even consciously recognize it, but something about those calls starts to feel like an imposition they have to manage. The fix is disarmingly simple, but it requires something from you. You have to be willing to hear no. Instead, say, "Is this a good time to talk for a few minutes?" And then, stop talking. Wait. Actually, listen to the answer. If they say, "Mom, I'm actually in the middle of something. Can I call you tonight?" Let that be okay. Let it be easy. That moment of genuine respect will do more for your relationship than an hour-long call that felt like an obligation. This one. Oh, this one. Your brother called me every Sunday. Your sister sends photos of the grandkids all the time. Your cousin came to visit Grandma last month. Isn't that nice? It might not even be framed as a comparison. It might sound completely innocent. But your adult child hears every syllable. Here is the psychological truth about sibling comparison. It never fully goes away. The feelings that were forged in childhood, the competition for parental love and approval, the fear of being the less favored one, those feelings don't disappear when children grow up. They go quiet. They go underground. But they are still there, and they can be reactivated in an instant. When you bring up a sibling in the first moments of a call, especially in a way that implies that sibling is doing better, you do not motivate your child to do more. You do the opposite. You make them feel inadequate. You make them feel compared, ranked, and subtly dismissed. And nobody wants to stay on a call that makes them feel like they're coming in second place in their own family. The replacement here is simple. When you call this child, this call is about this child. Keep it that way. Save news about siblings for when it comes up naturally, not as an opener, and certainly not as a measuring stick. We are living in a time when parents and grandparents are more connected to social media than ever before, and that's wonderful in many ways, but it has introduced a new kind of opening phrase that consistently causes friction. I saw on Facebook that you went to that concert. I noticed on Instagram that you were at the beach last weekend. Your neighbor posted a photo of you. Looked like you had a party? I want you to hear what your adult child hears when a call starts this way. I'm watching you. That's it. Not maliciously. You're not trying to surveil them. But the feeling on the receiving end is unmistakable. My parent is monitoring my social media, and now they're going to ask me about things I didn't choose to share with them. Adult children, even loving, close adult children, have a deep psychological need for autonomy, for the sense that their life is their own, not being reviewed and reported back on. When that boundary feels blurry, they pull back. They stop posting as openly. They start screening calls. What to say instead? Let them share. Ask an open, curious question. What's been going on with you lately? Or, tell me something good that happened this week. Give them the gift of choosing what they want you to know. That choice, that sense of control over their own story, is something they will, consciously or not, deeply appreciate. And here we arrive at the final phrase. And I want to spend a little extra time on this one because it shows up in so many different forms. When are you going to give me grandchildren? When are you going to come visit? When are you going to call more often? When are you going to settle down / get a better job / move closer? These questions feel natural to ask because the feelings behind them are real. You do want grandchildren. You do miss seeing them. You do wish they called more. These are legitimate human longings. But here is what happens in the mind of your adult child when a call opens with, "When are you going to?" The call has just become an interrogation, a performance review, a report card on how well they are meeting your expectations, and, implicitly, the suggestion that they are currently falling short. No adult, no matter how much they love their parent, wants to feel like a disappointment before the conversation has even warmed up. So they rush through the call. They give short answers. They find a reason to hang up. The shift here is powerful, but requires real vulnerability from you. Instead of asking when, share why it matters. Not, "When are you coming to visit?" but, "I really miss you. Is there any chance we could find a time to see each other soon? I'd love that so much." The first is a demand in the shape of a question. The second is an invitation wrapped in genuine love. One puts your child on the defensive. The other makes them want to say yes. Now that we've talked about what not to say, let me give you a simple, practical framework for opening a phone call that actually works. I call it the 3C method. It takes about 10 seconds, and it changes everything. C number 1, connect. Start by referencing something specific about their life, not yours. Something they mentioned last time, something you know is going on for them. "Hey, how did that appointment go last week?" Or, "I was thinking about your garden. Is it coming in yet this year?" This immediately signals, I was thinking about you, not just about my need to talk to you, about you, specifically. C number 2, check. Ask if it's a good time, and mean it. Is now okay to chat for a bit? This is not weakness. This is respect, and your child will feel it. C number 3, curiosity. Open with genuine interest in their world, not a report on yours, not a question that requires them to justify themselves, just honest, warm curiosity. Tell me something good, or what's making you smile lately? These questions invite them in. They don't corner them. Here's what a strong call opening sounds like when you put all three together. "Hi, sweetheart. I was thinking about that job interview you mentioned. Is now a good time? I'd love to hear how it went." 12 words. Warm. Focused on them. Permission-seeking. Curious. That's it. That's the whole framework. The science behind why this works is straightforward. When your child's brain registers that this call is going to be about connection, not correction, not guilt, not pressure, the emotional door swings open. They settle in. They stop watching the clock. The conversation becomes something they want to be in, not something they're enduring. I want to close today with something I say to nearly every parent I work with, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You are not a burden. You are their parent. You are someone who sacrificed, who showed up, who built the foundation they are standing on right now. The love between you is real, and it is deep. Even when the calls feel short, even when the distance feels wide. But love needs a language, and that language has to be one that the other person can actually receive. The shifts I've talked about today aren't about changing who you are. They're not about being less honest or hiding your feelings. They're about learning to wrap your love in a way that your children can open, instead of a way that makes them brace themselves before they answer. Most parents who say these phrases have no idea they're doing it. It's not malice, it's habit, it's unexamined patterns built over decades. And here's the beautiful truth: patterns can change, at any age, at any stage of a relationship. I've seen families that hadn't had a real conversation in years come back together, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely, because one person decided to open the next call differently. That person can be you, starting with the very next call you make. Here is what I want to ask of you this week. Just pick one phrase from today's list, just one, and the next time you reach for the phone, try the replacement instead. That's all, one small shift. Then come down to the comments and tell me what happened. What did you say? How did the call feel? I read every single comment on this channel, truly, and I would love to hear your story. If this video helped you today, please consider subscribing. Every week, I come back with new research, new stories, and new tools, all built around one goal: helping you live and love well in the years you have ahead. Because you deserve phone calls that end with, "I love you, talk soon," not silence and a clock ticking. And next week, I'm coming back with something I think will surprise you: why your adult children stop telling you important news, and the one simple question that changes that completely. You don't want to miss it. Take care of yourself, and go make that call.